The issue about trees and farming is an old one, and agroforestry is the in phrase, but you could, different terms have covered it. And so I want to just talk briefly about this at home, which is on the southern end of the Cairngorms. You're looking into them there, as you can maybe see. It's a beef sheep enterprise. But you can see a plantation at the back of the house, and we have others too. It's a traditional landscape with trees in one place and sheep and animals in another. You'll be familiar with the scene, shelter belts and plantations and whatnot. And we spend as farmers most of the time thinking about these animals here and grass, how to grow grass. As I said, we're also growing trees. So invariably, our stock at times get into the trees, fences break. And over the years, one thing we absolutely know is that cattle like trees. And as I'm sure everyone in this group knows, cattle are really woodland animals. They're woodland edge animals, and they use trees when they can get into them. They use them a lot. We're also probably used to this, and we normally see it as a problem, but sheep also use trees in particular ways and as browse as well, and that's normally seen as a problem. But trees, as we know, while I was still thinking about the interaction with trees and animals, alter the microclimate of the ground on which they're growing. And you can easily see ways that this benefits the animals. And essentially what it does is lengthen the growing season for the plants underneath, for the field layer, for the grass underneath the trees, in the autumn and in the spring, so that your grass grows longer, but it tends to depress the field layer growth in the summertime when there's a strong canopy cover. And we kind of all know that. But it's really a key point from the farmer's point of view. Trees also have their needs, and we probably all know that, particularly in a windy environment, they need other trees round about them if you're going to establish them easily, and particularly if you want to grow timber. So we took these things that were in our mind, and some 10, 15 years ago when we were planning new shelter belt replacements, it really occurred to us that we could use these attributes of trees and how livestock like to use trees and create what we saw as new wood pasture system. So what you would call agroforestry today. We came up with a design in the glen at home where we were wanting to move towards about a 50% tree cover, and we were wanting to grow oak. But the problem we had thinking about shelter belts is that we weren't going to grow enough oak to make it sensible from a marketing point of view, from a timber point of view. But we didn't want to plant lots of ground under trees because we would lose too much grazing. Usual problem a farmer faces. Foresters don't think that way, but farmers do think that way. So we came up with this kind of pattern, which was an alley planting pattern that you can see in its early days, and essentially the strips of trees with grass in between. And here it is on a little bit further. What it does is it has the characteristic of an ordinary woodland in the middle of these strips. So the trees are tightly grown, so they grow up straight. But it also has a huge amount of edge habitat, and that from a biodiversity point of view is extremely good. It maintains a field layer through, which is good for the biodiversity. Here you can see it maybe a bit better there. So you have, in this case, it's oak grown in center lines and other species that can coppice grown on the outside. This, you can see a bit of alder there and other such species. Then you stick in animals, and the animals, you're really treating this like a herb-rich pasture, and right through the farm we rotationally graze. So you put in animals in short bursts, and the sheep here have done quite a good high prune exercise. The trees are past the stage of being damaged, which sheep are perfectly capable of doing, as we all know, but you're treating this as a hybrid between a herb-rich pasture and a woodland. And that's important from a biodiversity point of view, because you've maintained a field layer, you get the chance for plants to grow. Here are some globe flowers, which previously under a set stocking regime disappeared, but under this wood pasture system are now flowering and expanding as a result. And the cattle also come in once the trees are up in size. So this is heifers on 10 years old. This is older, growing on a wetter end of the site. This is just a great habitat from the cattle point of view, but it's also capable of growing useful timber. And that brings me to the timber point. Our aim has always been to try and utilise timber on the farm, and we invested a couple of decades ago in a wee bandsaw mill, really with the aim of using windblown timber and timber around the farm to try and add some value to it. And of course, it's immediately become a bit of a community hub, if you can use that word. Here are two neighbours who both use the saw for their own interests and purposes. So that's important. The product side of things is very important to us. And this is also about maintaining employment. There's a shepherd there on the left and another one on the right, but they both work in those woods and they are the next generation. So that's what this word integration has meant to us in the context of trees, wildlife and farming and people.